Well, welcome back to another video here. Had someone recognize me at the Fort Wayne Farm Show we went to this week. So that was pretty neat to have someone actually recognize me, because I don't feel like I'm anything too big on here. But we had a good discussion. It's nice meeting folks and talking about farming. I love talking farming. And he had kind of asked me how we got started, and it kind of made me think I hadn't put up a video on YouTube about that. It's been a while since I did anything on TikTok about kind of how we got started. So we'll get into that in this video here a little bit. And if you haven't, check out the other video, kind of how I quit my job to farm. It gets a little bit more into maybe some of the jobs I've had to kind of leverage. I don't want to say leverage, but get me where I'm at, and more of a shorter time frame. And this will kind of go over, I guess, kind of how we really got started and going back to where we got started. So this is our, right now, 2026. Just got into the new year. It's still January. This will be our 5th full hay season. We did bale some custom round baling. I guess I don't really call that my first season, because we did maybe only like 40 bales, round bales that first year of custom baling. No mowing, no raking, no small squares, no nothing. So what I consider a full season is what starts in May and goes to the end of the year. That was some October hay, 4th cut in, that we were just baling up, and just to kind of stretch our legs and get used to the new round baler. So if you haven't watched my one video on kind of quit my job, that'll go into more detail on where I was at when I did quit my job to get into this farming full time. But essentially what really got me started, I was working at a pretty large dairy, started as a cropping manager, got rotated into maintenance, which I didn't really want to be in. That job really kind of just sucked, if I'll be honest. It really did. I was getting burned out pretty easily, working 8-10 hour days. Some weeks we'd be pushing 60-70 hours, which nothing crazy, but then I'd be going and bucking bales on the afternoons for a guy. So basically I'd get off work, I'd grab a bag of popcorn or whatever is quick and easy to eat on the road, and then I'd go drive out there and stack hay till dark. And that's what I did pretty much all summer, tail into that job. And it kind of got to a breaking point where I was just ready to leave that job. They kind of kept wanting more and more without giving the things we needed to get stuff done. And where I was stacking hay, that guy, he jockeys or buys and resells a lot of hay, delivers a lot to this larger metropolitan area like Toledo area, if you know where that is. If you're in Ohio, you probably do. So he buys and resells a lot of hay, and then he also makes a fair amount of hay himself, but he hires out custom operators to do all of his mowing and round baling. He's nothing huge by any means, maybe like 90 acres, but he really wanted me to come work for him because he needed help delivering hay throughout the year. And I said, well, I'll do it on one condition: you hire me to mow and you hire me to round bale, because you're already doing it, and I'll come work for you. It's a little bit of a pay cut, but I was really burned out where I was. We agreed on that, so I had enough cash saved up. I went out and bought a BR 7060 round baler, the same baler we have to this day. That thing has been one of the best investments I've ever made. And he had some 4th cut down at that time. It was like October or something like that. And I didn't have a tractor at that time that could run the round baler. I think my Oliver 1750 I had was, maybe the PTO was out. I think that was before I got the clutch fixed on the PTO. Either way, I didn't have a tractor to run on it, so we used his. It was like a 4230. Got that all wired up. You know, these newer round balers, you have to have the harness all wired up to the battery and all this fun stuff. Round baled maybe like 20 some bales. It took me an hour to get the first bale made, because I didn't really quite understand how the net wrap and everything worked. I've never been around round balers, or never ran one. Certainly never ran one. I've ran small square balers of all sorts of makes and models up until that point for other people. I've unloaded a lot of hay, but never really been around the round bales. So that was kind of my first experience doing that. So that's kind of really where it all started. And then that winter I ended up buying a white 2105. We still have that, and that's on the round baler. And that's about the only thing that tractor does anymore, because it does not have air conditioning. It does not have a fast road speed. It's just kind of an old tractor, and I'd rather sit in air conditioning to mow, rake, and small square bale, big square bale. Obviously that tractor isn't going to run the big square baler. But so that kind of got downgraded. That tractor used to do everything: mowing, small square baling, raking, everything. And then also at that time we bought a new Idea 5209 offset, pull type, disc bind, mower conditioner, whatever you want to call it. Drawbar, you know, it wasn't like a 3-point mounted one. But no, that mower did all right. We had a lot of repairs, and that thing got to be pretty expensive, so we ended up selling that mower off. And buying what we have now, which is a New Holland H7450 center pivot, 13-foot cut. Yeah, so that's really where we started, and that got us through our first Years, most of our income was coming from custom work, and like I said, this guy buys and resells a lot of hay, so we had a lot of great connections. I got to meet a lot of folks in the area who make hay, because we'd be buying hay off of them to resell to these stables in Toledo. And through those connections, I got more custom work lined up. We got a 35-acre field we custom round baled for someone. I think we custom round baled the first cut, half of the second cut, and then a little bit of the third cut for him, and did that for 2 years till he terminated that stand. So that was a great opportunity. And that was huge at that time. That was, I was making a couple $1,000s on that in a year, maybe like $3 or $4 grand. And I'm not trying to say that it wouldn't be good money now. It is, and I'd be grateful for any opportunity we get. But at that time, that was a huge thing. One big field, and round baling to me, it was just easy money. I loved it. I really did. And then through another guy we bought some hay off of. He had 18 acres that he wasn't going to make the hay on. He has like 4 or 5 different hay fields, I believe, and this is one of them that he wasn't going to get around to, so we made the second and then the third cut on that field. But I guess we need to backtrack a little bit. That was that first year we started farming, we got those opportunities. So the second and third cut on those 18 acres, we small square baled to resell. We didn't have any livestock at that time, and even now we have some, but nothing near enough to eat up hay. We're baling it to sell it to horses, essentially. That's what we're trying to do. The livestock is a side thing for hay that we can't necessarily sell into those bigger markets. But the thing that really kicked things off mostly was the custom work, but I did see an ad going into that season for 15 acres of grass, standing hay to buy, and that's really where things kind of started for me. I mean, we had a couple waterways lined up. We made like 300 bales on waterways in this little like really hilly area where they like have one flat spot. They park like their tender trailer to do spraying, but like it's just an area they don't farm, and we did that. It was like 2 acres, and that was awesome, and it took us half a day to bale it because we had so many issues with the baler. But that 15 acres was about maybe 24 miles away from home, and we've made it a few times since, and that's been a good opportunity. But it took us 3 days to bale it that first year because all we had was that Oliver Super 62 T8 baler is what we had, and it missed knots, and that was such a bear. I think we made like 750 bales on that field, and it took us 2.5 days to bale it. We borrowed some wagons, we had flat tires, we missed tie. I think the whole last half day we were there, the third day of baling, we weren't even baling windrows anymore. We were just driving around the field rebaling the broken bales, because what we do is just pull the string off. If one bale it mistied on one side, you just pull the string, leave the hay, and then you go back and rebale it after, and that's what we were doing. And I think we spent like 4 or 5 hours that second day just rebaling stuff, probably for the second, third, maybe even some bales the fourth time. And over time, we kind of got that dialed in a little more. We still had a lot of misties on that Oliver. I didn't really know exactly how to adjust these knotters. That baler we got for free. The tires were rotted off. The plunger was seized. There was a hornet's nest in the twine box. It was old. It had been sitting outside a while. He said, if you can get it home, it's yours. I was just going to scrap it. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll get it home. So we pulled the front tires off their 1750, the Oliver, and just bolted those right onto the baler, brought it home, and it sat on blocks for about a year before I got tires put on it, because we weren't making hay up until that point, because this all kind of happened before we got really started into making hay. But I just kept oiling the plunger, took the PTO shaft, slid it apart, and then put a big pipe over the shaft, and then just worked that flywheel back and forth, moving the plunger maybe a 1/4 inch at first, and then 1 inch, and over time you're moving it a little bit, and then after about a month or so of just that winter, putting oil, like old engine oil or WD-40, PB Blast, or what have you, we were doing everything. We finally got it where we could make a whole revolution on that plunger. And then we're taking loose straw from the mow. My uncles have straw stored in the barn at my house. It's their barn they own. I was just storing some equipment in it. So we'd fill up these barrels with loose straw, take them around the front of the barn, bring them down into the backside where the baler was, and then we just dump those barrels into the pickup and then rotate the flywheel. It'd probably take an hour or so, at least a half hour, to make one bale through the baler, because you'd have to put the hay or straw in and it'd make a slab, and you trip the knotter manually, obviously, because I wasn't going to wait for a full 3-foot bale. But then once we got a few slabs in, then I tripped the knotter, and then maybe I'd have my wife move the flywheel by hand at that point, and I'd watch the knotter and just kind of see what's going on there. And obviously, I knew enough to get the thing kind of working, because it wouldn't have worked if you would have put a tractor on it. The slip clutch and the flywheel just gave out, so that's why we had to keep working it back and forth, get things freed up. But eventually, I think our second year we got it tying a little bit better. But that's kind of where the first year went. We made about, I think, 3,000 bales of hay, or just under, maybe 300 bales. I think it was like 3,100 bales of hay, and then maybe 300 bales of straw we baled of small squares that year, that we baled, bought off of the landowner by the bale, stored in a barn that we were renting, and then we sold. sold for much less than we're selling stuff for now, because the bales were not as tight as what we make now. Maybe not as good a quality, because we're kind of picking up people's leftovers, waterways and decent hay, but not this really nice stuff that we're putting up now. So we did, I think, 900 round bales of custom work, and I don't know, maybe 100 or 200 acres, 200, 300 acres of custom mowing. So that kind of rounded out our first year, gave us a lot of confidence going to the next year, and we picked up a lot more going into that year, and things kind of snowballed from there. Before we get into the next couple of years of how we got started farming, figured we'd show you what we're doing here today. Putting in a round bale. This is some old foxtail junk, like I said. What we can't sell, we use. And this is going to go in for the hogs, for bedding, keep them warm. They're going to love it. They're going to tear it all up. This is going for the sow pen. We bring in small, or just slabs of big squares of like actual clean, nice, bright straw, dry straw for the feeder pigs that are in the back part. But this will be good enough for the sows. So our second year into farming was a lot more eventful. We had a few more fields lined up, actually full season rather than just a cut in here and there. So that was really exciting, really happy for that. The custom work kind of continued, grew a little bit. I think our second year farming, we put up about 11,000 small square bales, with a few thousand of those being custom. So obviously our first year we were not custom baling anything because we did not have the baler to do it. But the big thing that got us to get the baler to do it was we started year 2 with a second Oliver baler, an Oliver 710. Our first time using it, it got out of time, basically broke some stuff, and it was never quite right after that. Never really used it again. We get into straw, we're using the 62T, things are just clicking, it's doing great, not missing any knots. I don't know what's going on, but man, we got it dialed in pretty good over winter, and it's doing great. We get maybe a third of the way through baling straw. We had about 6,000 bales of straw we did our second year, up from 300, so a huge jump there. That's kind of where we see a lot of our big jumps in our production on year 2. But then the slip clutch goes out on that baler, and we tried doing everything. I forget what I end up doing, like pulling the springs out and just bolting it tight. We did some other creative things, that field fixes that we could, because I didn't know what else to do. The 710 was out. You think you have 2 balers, you'd have some redundancy built in. Well, wrong. They're both old. They're both worn out. You're going to have issues, especially when trying to push what we were doing. So we did end up finding a used slip clutch off of someone. The whole clutch assembly, whatever you want to call it, on the flywheel. Got that going, got through the rest of straw more or less, ended up, before we finished up straw, bought a New Holland 570 with a kicker and 4 wagons with it. And the rest is kind of history, and that really drove us to the direction we were going to go with the kick baler. I really liked how I didn't have to buck bales anymore. I could bale instead of being on the wagon the whole time. Normally I had my wife run the baler and I'd stack, and then we'd have the whole next day of hauling bales. So you know how that would just take forever to get stuff moved when you have most of your fields at least 8 to 10, 12 miles away. Now with the kick baler, I can just start filling wagons, and my wife can be hauling wagons home the entire time. So now, what used to be a 2-day job, we're getting it consolidated down into 1 day, and now we're not missing knots like we were before, and now we have a higher capacity baler, so we're driving faster and baling more per hour, missing very few ties, and hauling wagons at the same time, and just we're just getting so much more done. So like I said, we went from 3,400 bales year 1, I think, to about 11,000, maybe 12,000, almost 12,000 in our second year, and some of that being custom work. We jumped up a little bit in round bales. I think we did our first round bales for ourselves to sell. Everything up until that point, the round baler had never baled a bale of hay, or straw that we were going to sell. Everything that we did that first year was strictly custom work with the round baler. Didn't have a skid steer our first year. We ended up buying a skid steer into our second year, a Heston, halfway through the year. Cleaned out the barn for that guy I was helping out and working for. So his loader was down. I used my Heston. It would start with about 3 cans of ether and a jump battery starter, but it would go. We ended up getting rid of that because I was so tired of messing with it. Got a higher capacity Gale 6640, which we have to this day, and that's been a pretty decent machine. But we had that skid steer, we had the Oliver loader, we could take the bucket off, and it had like these forks. They were manure forks, but you could move bales. It was really slow, really inefficient, but it worked. So we did, I think, like 30 or so round bales of clover, stubble clover that year to resell. And then we did maybe like 110 round bales of straw to resell. So we kind of dabbled in that a little bit. I think we did maybe just right over 1,000 bales in year 2 with the round baler, with a little over 100 or so of them being personal, I guess, if you want to call it personal, for resale. Yeah, so that kind of rounds out year 2, more or less. We mowed a few more acres, still had that 5209. We had an Oliver Haybine for a backup when the 5209 would go down, because it did quite a bit. I'm not trying to say it's a bad mower. I think they're good mowers. Ours is just worn out and abused a lot before we got it. So we had a lot of cutter bar issues, hydraulic problems, whether it be cylinders that we were resealing, hoses, you name it, bearings, this and that. But yeah, year 2 was, like I said, every year it just kind of things get more promising. Like we're meant to be doing this. Things are going well. There's a lot of discouraging moments in that too. Like we got into straw, and both my small square balers are both broken. And then also on top of that, I was strapping down some round bales, and in the process of jumping down off the trailer, my wedding ring here got caught, and I don't know if you can see that, 7 stitches partially degloved my finger right in the middle of straw season. I guess I'll preface that. So I've never gotten stitches before in my life, and our second year farming, I cut open the side of this finger, got 3 stitches there on the chute on the Oliver baler, unfolding that when we got to the field. Wasn't really paying attention, got caught when it folded out. So that kind of sucked. That was in first cutting. Straw rolls around, both balers are broken. I had to get 7 stitches, and right before straw started to complicate matters even more, my wife was 8 months pregnant. We saw rain coming. Nobody was really cutting wheat yet. There's rain in the forecast. The doctor at one of her appointments said, well, we can induce you today if you're ready. Everything's looking good. And we're like, yeah, we got rain, let's do it. So we got her induced. So we spent, a couple days in the hospital like you would with having a kid. No complications there. Luckily, everything was healthy. But we kind of moved the birth of our firstborn around getting straw baled. I think he was no more than maybe 2-3 days old. My wife had, the harness. She wore him driving the Oliver 1750, and I was bucking bales behind it. And my son was strapped to her. We did that for a couple days. We had partnered with a friend to help us with some of that straw. So then after I got the stitches, I wasn't much good for bucking bales. I think it took me a week or 2 before I kind of got back in. I was just doing it one-handed with a hook. It wasn't bad. I was a little slower. Luckily we had some help there. Normally I like to do everything myself, but there's no way we were getting through all that just with the 2 of us. So yeah, straw was very discouraging, having 2 balers go down, getting stitches, trying to do things one-handed, having a newborn at home for the first time, firstborn, trying to learn all of that. It was a lot. We got through it. Things turned around a little bit. We got that 570. Like I said, things went really well. I really liked that. Like I said, that was just a huge jump, leaps and bounds ahead of where we've been. Like I said, this is all in just 2 years of kind of farming. We jumped up into a really nice baler, honestly. Still have it as a backup. Now we have 5070 as our main. And then our last cut into the year, I don't remember if it's 3rd or 4th. Like I said, we do standing hay. So like we might be on 4th cut, but other people might have a 3rd cut similar time. You know how it goes. We got into that field. The mower wasn't mowing right. It was working. I think I couldn't get my RPM set right, or the knives were all there. They were all decent. It just was stripping. It was just not cutting well. Got chewed out a little bit over that. I mean, I wasn't happy about it, but I think that kind of sucked. Then we go start raking, and then we lose. There's like this little tooth inside the rake on the hub for like an overrunning clutch. I guess the hub kind of slipped apart and the shaft started kind of like sliding out, and all those components came out. So now the rake's no good, and the tire almost came off with the hub and everything. So we didn't even get that like 12-acre field finished raking. We started baling it. It's kind of like a weird joint effort with a guy who was renting it. We were going to bale it, and then it was going to get sold to someone else. I don't really remember. It was a really messy thing, so a lot of people had their hand in it, and I was doing most of the work. The guy who was renting it took the first couple cuttings, and he was just going to sell the last one. And basically what he would get from selling the last one would cover his rent, and he had the first 2 for free. It was going to be a really good arrangement. He ended up finished raking it for me. I go in with the 570. Things are clicking away, and got rain coming the next day. It's a field surrounded by trees. The dew's setting in quick. It's like maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, late season hay. I think it's right around 4:30. Things are about to close, and then the baler breaks. A tiny little pin, smaller than your fingernail, no more than a 1/2 inch long. It's not a cotter pin, or it might be like a really, really small roll pin in the knotter assembly itself. Came out, so it's one of those worm gears, like slid down, so it wasn't tight on one side. And I wasn't going to be able to get parts, obviously, that day. So there's nothing we could do. Your mower's not working right. The rake just broke. The baler just broke. It was maybe a $2 part, simple to fix. but I didn't have it. I wasn't going to be able to get it, and we had rain coming. So we pulled his John Deere baler out, and I went back to bucking bales, stacking wagons. But oh, I was so discouraged after that. That was, you think you're moving forward, moving ahead, and it's like one step forward, two steps back in a way sometimes. So it didn't really end the second season out on a great note, but it gave me some things to kind of mull over in my head. We end up getting rid of the Oliver 710, still had the 62T, still do have it. I think we have a buyer for it. I haven't used it in years, a few years now, I guess, not years, but we ended up buying a New Holland 575, which is the next model up, same era, I guess, as the 570. This thing was really worn out, but it was a higher capacity, so it'd be good for straw. We were replacing shear bolts all the time on it, but that kind of takes us into year 3, and we'll get into that in just a bit. Well, my third year, as with every year, we get into spring, and you're full of optimism, excited for what's going to go on. Every year we kind of go in with some new equipment, something exciting, fun to try. That winter, like I said, we bought that worn out 575. Still, that was a decent purchase. We bought it really cheap and sold it for more than we bought it for, and didn't really put any money into it, but it did break a lot of shear bolts because it had some, I think a bushing on the flywheels out, but nonetheless, I digress here. The big purchases that winter was an MXU 135 loader tractor. So that was really nice having another loader tractor, kind of, because that Oliver wasn't cutting it, so we'd have something to load out round bales in the field, skid steer home to unload them, or at the rental barn to unload them, or wherever we're at. We had a couple places for storing round bales on year 3. And then the other big purchase, I'm trying to remember what that would have been, the mower. Picking up that H7450 New Holland. That thing we bought real good price on that too. And that turned out really well. We really didn't have any issues with that. But we go into the new year excited. Then we also bought the white 6125. So now we have our first tractor with air conditioning. So that was really exciting. That was going to run the small square baler. I can sit in the AC, radio, really nice. MXU should have had AC. It didn't really work very well. Kind of did, kind of didn't. It still was blazing hot in that thing all summer. It leaked a lot of oil. None of the stuff on the dash worked. It leaked water into the cab when it rained. It had a lot of issues, but it was still high horsepower tractor. Front wheel assist to the loader, really nice to mow with. So yeah, that MXU was really exciting to have. But we bought it cheap because it had, I think, a fuel issue, had algae in the tank. Didn't really know that at the time. But we kind of thought we had it going all right until you kind of go out to use it, and then it just kind of falls flat on its face. We had, I guess we'll start with what the year started. We started mowing hay. It was an early spring and got into the fields. Things were surprisingly dry. Like, we had some really nice dry spells, which was, I think, the only saving grace, that we did not lose a ton of money and have a lot of hay get rained on, because basically the first small spell we hit, we were doing small fields like I try to do when possible, where you have tighter windows early spring, just to kind of break in equipment, make sure things are working good. And I was going to go rake some hay with that 6125. We had widened tires, thought everything was tight. It's wedges that kind of hold that onto the axle. Well, apparently things weren't tight, and the left rear tire came off of the tractor, the whole rim, everything just right off the axle, while I was going down Route 6, the highway. So that was really fun. That tire's probably close to 400 or 500 pounds. Had to call some people to help. I wasn't gonna, we had some good folks, I used to milk cows for in that area where I was making the hay, and they came out and helped me roll the tire back up the hill, because it rolled way out, and luckily nothing was planted but out into this field, and a few hundred feet off of the highway. We had to roll it back up a hill to the highway to get it on the tractor, jacking the tractor up, putting blocks in, blocking up the jack, jacking it up, blocks in, back and forth, back and forth. Had a deputy block off traffic behind us, and all in a said and done, it took about 4 hours to get that back on. And then I spent the rest of the summer nervous. And we didn't have any more issues with that, I guess, per se, but that kind of put a sour taste in my mouth. But still optimistic. We're going good. We have more hay lined up than we ever had. We got some really cool looking equipment, air conditioning, big stuff. I think we're really moving now. We got a flatbed truck, that Dodge had air conditioning. It was a 6-speed, it's a diesel, really cool stuff we're doing. We get to our big first push with some big acres we're going to be doing. I don't know, it's like maybe 40 or 50 acres, and a big loop around town, and it would have been like maybe 60 miles of total driving between and everything. It was going to be about a 2 to 3 days. I was going to mow, park it, and then mow the next field, and then drive, and then just kind of bail that as we're going, because we had like a 9-day stretch without rain. We get to the first field. I get maybe 2 passes on the end rows off with that white, because the case was still in the shop with the fuel issues we had yet to resolve. So that wasn't even we weren't able to use that yet. So I'm mowing with the 6125, and then it just gets really rough all of a sudden, like just riding really rough. I get out and check, and sure enough, my tire's completely flat, basically coming off the rim. The rear tire, of course, the expensive one, and I think they were pretty old, but I thought they looked all right. Apparently not. So I have to call someone out. This is going into a weekend. I think it was like Memorial Day weekend, so holiday weekend, so there's only so many people available. I'm going into work. This is, I believe, a Friday. I get a call around noon. I'm eating lunch. I was maybe going to take off a little early, but I get a call from the tire guys. He's like, oh, I'm stuck out in the field, because there's like one wet spot to get towards the tractor. So I got to go out there, leave work early, unhook the mower, drive the tractor on the flat tire to him so he can put the tire on. And then once he gets the tire on, it took him a couple hours, and I went home and ate lunch at that time and came back, pulled him out, hooked back up the mower. I get maybe another half hour of mowing, and then all of a sudden the tractor just stops moving. I think it's just a micro switch in the armrest or something, like a neutral safety switch. I'm not really sure what it was. I forget exactly what it was, but it took a few weeks to really trace that down. We didn't know the issue at that time. All we knew is it wouldn't move. It'd start and run, PTO, all that stuff, but the transmission wouldn't. Everything was fine, just a micro switch, like $20 switch, but it took a while to troubleshoot and figure that out. So the tractor is down. I go, we think we have the case kind of resolved. It thought it was just maybe fuel filters or this code or this or that. We get a half mile on the road and it just runs out of power, falls flat on its face, and we got to drive it back to his place. I'm like, all right, well, we got to keep mowing. Hey, we got a lot to do. All I had left at that time, I think I already sold the Oliver 1750 at that time. All I had left was the white 2105, and that does have 1,000 shaft on it. And I did everything I could, trying to get it out of there. It was like seized in there. The 540 was that we've had. I for the life of me could not get that 540 shaft pulled out. I think we parked it overnight with a ratchet strap on it to a trailer, and if I got any tighter, it'd be pulling the butt end of the trailer to the tractor, and the shaft still wouldn't come out. I had like the 4 bolts and I had the stuff off of it where it should have just popped out, and it wouldn't. So I ended up borrowing a buddy's mower, I ended up pulling my haybine, the old Oliver haybine we had, because we sold the new idea at that time. Ended up finished mowing that field down with the haybine, then got onto my next field with the haybine mowing, and it just kept plugging and just kept plugging and kept plugging, and I'm fighting it and fighting. I'm like, what is going on? These sickle sections, it's like you replace a couple and you think you got it. Turned out a bearing on the reel went out, and then the couple sections on the sickle that I can't fix because it needs riveted versus just the bolt-on sections. Those were out, plus the bearing on the reel. I'm like, screw this. So unhooked the mower. My wife pulled that home with the truck, and we ended up borrowing be essentially the same thing as a 5209 disc spine from a buddy. I think it's a Case International model. Mowed another like 4 or 5 acres with that because I broke my haybine. Then that mower broke. I don't know if like a keyway internally in the gearbox went out, but that just stopped moving altogether. So, borrowed mower, I paid him to borrow it. So like he got something out of it. I still felt just awful. But that mower broke. My haybine's broke. My disc spine's running, but I have nothing that can pull it. I don't have a 1,000 shaft tractor running at that time. So the first field we were at, where we had the mower still parked at, was next to some people that kind of go to our sister church, and I knew them in passing and whatnot, and their mower broke too also at the same time. So we're like, well, let's come together. You guys got tractors with 1,000 shafts. I got a mower that's working. So we just put those two things together. He finished mowing his 20 acres or whatever he had. I had like 20, 25 acres left to mow. So I finished mowing that down, or my wife did while I was at work. I think it's like a 1086 International that we hooked onto our mower, and we got everything mowed. So that was kind of a really rough start to the year. What should have been maybe 2 days of mowing, I think dragged out over to 5 or 6 days. It was just a really rough week. But got through that, and really the rest of the year went pretty smooth, year 3. And really excited we got through all that. That was kind of tough to move through that. I think I kept pretty calm, level-headed through a lot of that. Maybe I had more patience back then than I do now, I suppose. But bringing us into like year 4, now we got that 1 ton, the white 4-wheel drive we have now. Still have that old Dodge. Bought, if you can see behind me, this Puma 130. And I bought that, financed half of it, and I'm like, well, we'll pay it off in the fall, because I kind of know what we normally buy. I knew that was going to be a bottleneck. I wanted to get rid of the MXU because the issues that had, and replace it. And this was a CVT loader, checked a lot of boxes, dual speed PTO, a lot of things I really liked. So we ended up buying that, financing half. First time I've ever financed a piece of equipment. I had my house paid off. I didn't have any debt we were paying down, and I really liked that. It allowed us to take on a lot more risk in the operation. So we did that. And like, there's nothing else we're really going to buy to take on debt. There's maybe, we're going to buy a truck later on. So we'll just finance this, make our monthly payments. We got 5 years of payments on it. But I'll probably still buy a truck this winter. We still bought that 1 ton, the GMC we got now later on that winter. And then we'll just pay the rest of it off in the fall. Make a few months of payments and, whatever. We lose a couple grand in interest on it. Not a huge deal. Not even a month later, I think after I brought that home from Pennsylvania. Coming off the, mile out from my house, I see some signs for auction. I wonder what that is. You look it up, and sure enough, it's property coming up for auction, public auction, and it's no more than a half mile from the house. And I'm like, well, this is the third public auction we've gone to and gotten pre-approval from the bank. And I'm like, it'll be no different than any others. There's always those big players. If you are in farming, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Everybody's got them. There's not a single place, I think, in this country that doesn't have some bigger outfits. Right or wrong, you can disagree with them or not, but every place has got them. They run, whether it be cash rent up or land values up beyond kind of the economical value of what that is. So I'm like, well, we'll probably get outbid anyways, but we're going to get pre-approval. We're going to bid on this ground, and we're just going to see what happens. We've been outbid by thousands of dollars per acre at every other auction we've gone to. So we get pre-approval, we go, and somehow we end up with the highest bid, and that's where we have everything now. You see a lot of our videos on, kind of out in the woods. There's 7 acres of woods on that 50 acres. There's 1 acre of it's kind of the ditch that separates the 2 fields, and then 42 tillable. So it's a really, really nice property. Super excited about it. But that changed some plans and kind of how we're going to run finances, because now I can't afford to pay this off. I mean, we're paying it off. We're making our payments. There's no cash flow. Perfectly fine. No issues at all. But I can't just pay it off in one lump sum in the fall, because now, instead of putting the money I would have had, allocating money from this year's cash flow into paying off that tractor, we have a mortgage to pay on the farm. And the farm isn't going to pay the mortgage because it's a new seeding hay. I strongly believe, if we're small square baling that, marketing it aggressively, doing really well on that end, a good year of producing hay, that farm will pay for itself. Not by a lot. But if it doesn't, it's not going to take a lot of money from outside income to make that farm mortgage, which is kind of unique compared to like row crops where, and I could be wrong, and maybe you guys can correct me on this, but my understanding of row crops is, maybe a good year, the farm might make its payment, but that's rare if you're even paying for 2/3 or half of your mortgage with the farm's production, and you're pulling a lot of income from whether it be a day job or other rented acres, other owned acres, and you're just doing it for the equity standpoint. Well, I believe this farm's not going to hurt cash flow. It's going to allow us to have a place to build barns, kind of a home place to work out of, so we're not renting barns. So some really nice stuff there. And then more control over the type of hay we have, because like I said, we hadn't really had much control over what we do when we buy standing hay crops. Year 3 was the first year we had rented ground. 9 acres we picked up. We planted the hay. We're going into our third year on that stand. This year did all right. We got some things I want to do differently managing that. But yeah, right now all we have is my own 42 tillable acres. I got that 9 acres, and then we got a lot more acres lined up going into our 5th year, which we're in the 5th year now, but obviously not making hay yet, being January. But so that's kind of the progression of where we've gone with some things, buying that property. Like I said, instead of paying this tractor off like I wanted, a lot of that cash flow we're pulling in from the acres that we're running and whatnot, that's going to go towards some things on the property. It takes a lot to put the stone drive in. It needed a stone drive through the woods for access because it had been accessed through some easements. Well, not really easements, but just because it was owned through similar families. There was no easements, so now I had to create my access that wasn't there prior, put my crossover on the ditch, and just all these things. After next year, I think things are going to free up some more capital. We can look at some other things financially, but right now, the farm's kind of priority to try to focus on getting that productive and allowing us to move forward. Hoping we get some barns put up here soon. But yeah, so 4th year farming, we started by buying a farm, and this year went really well. We probably put up fewer small squares than we have in years past. So year 1 was 3,400 small squares. Year 2 is I think 11,000. Year 3, between custom work, we did about 5,000 or 6,000 bales of custom small square baling, because we had nice kick balers at that time So we did, I think it was nearly 22,000 small square bales through the balers, 6,000 of which was straw, another 6,000 or so, give or take, maybe 6,500 or so. I think it was like 6,500 bales of straw and 6,000 of custom, and then 9,000 bales of hay. And all that hay was what we're selling. And this year we're probably within 100, 150 bales of last year's total hay production, but we did not small square bale any straw. We didn't do near as much custom small square baling, but I think total tonnage this year we're higher than we were in years past because we have the big square baler. We round baled a lot more hay this year. We dropped a lot of our custom work, not really dropped, but fields were terminated, rotated out, if you will, and we didn't gain those custom contracts back. And I'm not aggressively chasing that because the money, really where the best money is at, in my opinion, where you have the most control is producing your own hay and then marketing it and selling it. And we've really kind of gone that route, and things have been really great. And we're really excited for our 5th year. I guess if you have any questions on kind of how we started or want other video suggestions, I guess just leave that in the comments below, and I'll be more than happy to make some videos on it. Really haven't talked too much about how we got into some of these livestock, but we've tried a dozen things to get into farming before the haymaking really took off, and that's really what did it for us. We tried bottle calves, we tried farrowing in the past, and got out of both. The bottle calves we got burned on really bad, lost a lot of money on that. We've tried market gardening, did okay on that. The time really wasn't worth it, but the margin was decent because there's not a lot into it. But there's a lot of other small things here and there we've tried just to keep cash flow in the farm, things that I enjoy growing, whether it be in a garden or hay field or running livestock. Any way of producing some sort of food product, I think it's just fun. It's fascinating to me. And I mean, if you're watching this video, you probably agree with me on that too. The equipment side is just as much fun. So when things work, we've had plenty of issues too, but yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, just drop those in the comments below, and I'd be happy to answer them and make any other video suggestions, or maybe talk more on the livestock. I'm no expert by any means, and we're obviously not a large producer at all. With only, now we're at 11 ewes and a little over 20 goats. Very small potatoes, but they do add some value. They're more there for waste product than they are for the value they actually provide. So I figured waste hay, market it on hoof versus just selling it for cost of production or less even sometimes. So thanks for watching, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.